Guten Tag, WAP. This is Mr. Liniger. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 5, Day 5. We're going to finish up talking about the early modern period today, 1450 to 1750. We'll be talking about Western Europe mostly and a little bit of Africa and Japan. But let's get started with our daily punishment. What did the duck say when she bought makeup? Put it on my bill. Bill. This is a bill for a duck. All right, so let's talk about some general Western European trends during this time. This is going to be the period of the Renaissance. You should know before the Italian Renaissance, the rediscovery of Roman and Greek art, architecture, learning, and the Northern Renaissance, which was more of like the retranslation of the Bible from Greek and Hebrew. The Northern Renaissance was more influenced in religion, where the Italian Renaissance was more secular and humanistic. You should know about the Protestant Reformation. It was started in 1517 by Martin Luther when he posted the 95 Theses. He just wanted to reform the church because of the practice of indulgences. The church is going to condemn him. And Luther will become more radical. He'll start creating like Protestant beliefs, which all Protestants have. The 5 solas: sola fide, you're saved through faith alone; sola gratia, you're saved through grace alone; sola Christo, you're saved through Christ alone; sola scriptura, you're saved through the scripture alone, the Bible; and sola gloria. Yeah, those are the big ones. Christo, gratia, fide, and scriptura. Those are the 4 big ones. The other one's not as important. Another big Protestant reformer is going to be John Calvin. He is going to differ in Martin Luther. Luther did believe that the Eucharist was the body and blood of Christ. Calvin did not agree with that. They both will take their inspiration from the Bible. Calvin also focused on double predestination, that before you were born, it was determined whether you were going to heaven or hell, which is kind of the natural result of Protestantism. Zwingli was another Protestant reformer. You're going to have the 30-Year War, which starts as a war between Catholics and Protestants. It is going to become a political war. At the end of the war, you're going to have the Treaty of Westphalia. That's going to allow the kings to have limited tolerance. The Treaty of Westphalia is going to allow the princes to choose their religion. The Treaty of Westphalia also allowed Protestants in a Catholic region to be able to practice their religion at home, to attend religious services, and to bring up the children according to their religion. Same thing for Catholics in a Protestant region. So it did allow some religious freedom, not for some of the more radical sects like the Anabaptist, but it is definitely the first step towards religious freedom. We're going to have the Commercial Revolution during this time. This is a general term for the economic developments in Western Europe from the 13th through 18th century. It includes things like the birth of capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, mercantilism, the whole inflationary period with the price revolution. Capitalism will be born during this time. Capitalism believes the government should not be involved in the economy. People should be able to create their own businesses with limited government involvement in the economy. It's going to be created by Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations. The Enlightenment will happen during this time. Enlightenment tries to focus using human reason. It's very optimistic. It believes society could better itself. It focuses on political, cultural, and social outlooks. Some of the examples of the Enlightenment for political freedoms, you have Montesquieu, who came up with the idea of separation of powers; Voltaire, who did freedom of religion; Beccaria, who did no cruel and unusual punishment; John Locke, who came up with the idea of the social contract theory and natural rights. You have Mary Wollstonecraft, who was one of the first feminists and came up with the idea of women's rights. You also have the scientific revolution during this time, which was in the 1600s. People like Isaac Newton and the creation of physics and calculus. You have Galileo and Copernicus, who came up with the idea of that the Earth revolved around the sun. You have Hooke. You have Leeuwenhoek, who created the microscope during this time. Let's talk about some of the European countries. England is going to be a constitutional monarchy. The power of the king will be limited by constitutions and by a legislative branch, parliament. You have the Magna Carta in 1215, which limited the power of the king. You have the English Bill of Rights, which were one of the first documents that granted political freedom and individual rights. England is going to get colonies in the Americas. They're going to colonize South Asia, South Africa, other parts of the world. There will be civil wars in England. They have the Glorious Revolution where they overthrow the king and adopt the English Bill of Rights. Before that, they execute Charles I, and you have the Puritan Wars. France is an example of an absolute monarchy. The king had absolute power. A good example of that is Louis XIV. They will have also colonies in Quebec. They have India, although they're going to lose India. France practiced mercantilism, where they put taxes on the colonies and they force them to trade with the mother country, and the government puts tariffs. Denmark is going to create a joint stock company called the Dutch East India Company. They will also be a constitutional monarchy, just like the British create joint stock companies, like the British East India Company, the Jamestown Company, Massachusetts Bay Company. For the Dutch, Denmark, they will create colonies in places like Cape Town, South Africa. They'll have New York, although they'll lose that to the English. They're going to get parts of Southeast Asia, modern-day Java. Portugal will be the first European country to begin exploration under Prince Henry the Navigator. He's going to create European schools for exploration. The Portuguese will adapt some, create faster ships that can explore, like the Caravel, bigger versions of that called carracks. They get the magnetic compass, they adapt that. They adapt the astrolabe to coast through the west coast of Africa and use the wind to circumnavigate Africa. The Volva de Mar create a new lateen, which they adapt, a lateen sail. You'll have, the first thing they do is they find out how to circumnavigate the coast of Africa. You have Bartolomeu Diaz and Vasco da Gama. Their original goal was to get to Africa. They also will get to Brazil later on. The Portuguese will be the ones that will be in charge of the Atlantic slave trade. They will buy slaves from enemy tribes in Africa and send them to the Americas to work in plantations or haciendas. In the Treaty of Tordesillas, the Pope will divide the world between Spain and Portugal so they didn't fight over it. Portugal will get Africa and Brazil. Spain's going to start exploration after the Spanish. They're going to, Christopher Columbus will get them to the Americas. He thought he was getting them to India. There'll be Spanish conquistadors that will colonize the Americas. Cortez will defeat the Aztecs, and Pizarro will defeat the Incas. The Spanish will use the Native Americans as slave labor at first. You had the encomienda system, which allowed the Spanish to use the natives as slaves if they didn't convert to Roman Catholicism. The repartimiento system was similar to that, but it allowed the village to choose the people. The mita system was something they did in Peru, where the natives would have to work in the mines for certain months of the year. They would choose a certain amount of people, and those people would work in the mines for the Spanish certain months of the year. The Spanish will stop using the natives as slave labor after a while because the natives will die out. They will not be immune to European disease. Also, it'll be easier for them to escape, and the Spanish will start importing Africans. You will have the Colombian Exchange during this time, the exchange of food crops from the Old World to the New World. You have the huge trade ships, the Manila galleons. Spain will colonize South America, Central America. Spain will also colonize the Philippines. Yep. Russia is going to overthrow the Mongols. Remember, Russia was part of the Mongols last unit. There'll be peasants in Russia that will migrate to Central Asia, like the border. They'll defend the border from the Tartars, the latter-day version of the Mongols. In return, the Russian peasants will be given land. They'll become the Cossacks. Ivan the Terrible was not a very good ruler. We talked about him before. He will, after he dies, it'll lead to a civil war in Russia before the Romanov dynasty gains power. In the Great Schism, the Orthodox and the Catholic Church will split, mostly over Caesaropapism. Peter the Great and Catherine the Great are both going to start the process of westernization. They're going to try to westernize Russia, advance the military, the economy, math, science, although they are not going to take ideas politically from the Enlightenment. They're not going to try to democratize Russia. They are examples of enlightened absolutism. For Japan, we're going to have a new dynasty that's going to remain the shogunate for the next 250 years. In the battle of Sekigahara in 1600, the Tokugawa dynasty will win. They're going to rule for 250 years. They're going to establish a period of isolationism where they only allow one Dutch ship to trade once a year. They're going to be centralized feudalism, where they do have a feudal system, but the shogun does have power. The shogun could hold the daimyo family members hostage. Because of the whole Japanese honor system, he could tell them to commit sabuka. It is a centralized system, unlike European feudalism. You have the shogun, then you have the daimyo, and then the samurai, and then the peasants. The emperor is very... he doesn't have a lot of power. There will be persecution against the Catholics. One of Tokugawa Ieyasui's advisors was Will Adams, who was English, and he's going to kind of poison his thought against a lot of the things the Catholics did, like how the Pope divided the world between the Catholics and the Protestants, and how in the past the Catholics had taken over every land they had visited. The shogun was also worried that the Catholics had dual loyalty, so he will force the Japanese Catholics to either unconvert or be crucified. During this time, most of Africa, interior Africa, will be stateless societies, tribes. There will be some centralized states based on religion and unity. You have like Bantu areas. You have areas that are Christian, like Abyssinia, which is Ethiopia. You have some new kingdoms during this time, like Congo converts to Roman Catholicism under King Alfonso. He did try to protest to the Pope about the slave trade because the Portuguese were still enslaving his people. You also have Nyong'o, which was under Queen Nzinga, and she tried to stop the Portuguese from colonizing her area and enslaving her people. You had other civilizations which helped with the slave trade in return for guns from the Portuguese, like Oyo, Asante, Dahomey. And at the end of this time period, most of the African civilizations on the coastal areas had been colonized by the Europeans. Abyssinia, aka Ethiopia, had not been colonized yet. Either had any of interior Africa. The Europeans were not able to get into the interior aspect of Africa because they couldn't navigate the rivers and because they got sick from malaria and didn't have like the kind of medicine for that to navigate the putrid, disease-filled interior aspect of Africa. The Europeans' immune system could not handle it. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. Until next time, deuces. Deuces, deuces.